because there was a time where my life wasn't what it is now, and it was the blame game. If only my mom had, if only my father had, if only I had not been black in America, what I'm saying? If I would have been born white, what I'm saying? It's like always something, like if I would have went to better schools, or if this was, it's like, no. The real value is you. And you place value on everything else. So when I got to a point where it's like, yo, E, you owe you. Your mama don't owe you no more. You're talking about stuff that happened to you when you were 12. You 32. Like, enough. You talking about your father not being in your life. Bro, that was good when you was 9 and 10. But you got a family now. You got a wife and kids now. Like, they don't deserve you talking about something that didn't happen to you when you need to be creating stuff for them. It's like, come on, bro. You owe you. Don't nobody else owe you.
You are here. Welcome to the Purpose Finder podcast. This is the show where we uncover why you are truly here, and more importantly, how to make it your reality. My father, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, said the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life without purpose. And research further shows that people with a strong sense of purpose are 2.4 times more likely to feel fulfilled. Each week, I sit down with extraordinary guests, entrepreneurs, artists, thought leaders who are boldly living their why. We dive deep into their journeys, the struggles they have overcome, their breakthroughs, and the lessons that can help you do the same. I am your beautiful host, Charisa Munroe-Wilborn, and we're about to explore the mindsets, tools, and strategies to help you live a life with purpose, passion, and legacy. Are you ready? Let's go and dive into the episode. Here we are. Welcome back to another great episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. Here where our mission is simple: to inspire you to find and uncover your purpose in life, and to live a life overflowing with three things: meaning, fulfillment, and significance. And we are all searching, asking the big question, why in the world am I here? Well, I hope your search ends right here. I am your host, Charisa Munroe-Wilborn, and today I have the honor, the privilege, the incredible, pleasant favor to sit with a great man who is not only thinking about purpose, he doesn't only talk about purpose, but he is living it boldly. Dr. Eric Thomas, you guys know him as E.T., the hip hop preacher. Mr. Eric Thomas, I promise I will call you E.T. throughout. I automatically just want to say Dr. Thomas. It's the way that I was raised, to respect your elders. But please, it is such a pleasure. It is such a pleasure to have you. It is such a pleasure for you to be here.
Amen.
I know people are just waiting to hear what is going to exude from just who you are, from your heart.
Amen.
And I'm looking forward to learning from you, myself, from your story, from your journey as you have pursued purpose and lived it out. So welcome.
Thank you.
I'm
so
not going to
much.
read a bio.
Amen. Thank you for not reading the bio.
Tell us from your heart. They want to hear from your heart. Yeah. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do, with all that beautiful good stuff.
I guess who I am is, it's so funny. You said we all want to belong. We all want to belong. We all want to be a part of a community. We all want to find our purpose. And I guess I'll start there. I found myself at 16 years old, homeless. And a lot of it was, this thing of belonging. Like, my biological father wasn't in my life. My mom got pregnant at an early age. She was 17. She had me a little bit after 18. And, I spent the majority of my life, I remember asking my mom, like, yo, who's that man? My mom would always be like, what man? I'm like, Mom, I don't know. But it was some man, it's like, I knew some man was missing. I got, I think my mom married right when I was about turning 5. And so, the memory is there, but it's not there, And so I always knew emotionally, I kind of knew, like, intuitively, I knew because of relatives that the person that was raising me wasn't my biological father. So I found myself homeless at 16 years old. I think I addressed my mom about 12, maybe almost 13, like, be honest with me, who is my real father? My mom was like, well, that's not your father. This is your father, and I was like, oh, okay. And I think it was devastating because I knew my father. Like, I grew up, I don't know, most kids, I don't think when they don't know their father, they don't know their father. I had been around my father my whole life and didn't know he was my father. My grandmother raised me, his mom, my aunts. I had a very close relationship with my aunt, especially her youngest daughter, Cleo, who was named after my grandma. I was around, his sister, his brothers, I was around my family. He was just considered to be a friend of the family. So I'd see him from time to time, but, we never had a conversation. So I just remember, 16 years old, homeless, and kind of like, man, God, wow, this is crazy. Like I think I didn't grow up going to church. My mom would send me to a religious camp when I was 8. So I literally fell in love with God at 8. I wouldn't say that I accepted him in my heart the way the church says it, but I accept him in my heart. Like, it wasn't anything official. It wasn't anything, I didn't get baptized or anything like that. I was at the camp and they started talking about, John the Baptist. They were talking about David and Goliath. They were talking about Noah, Jonah, and it was like, man, something in my heart was just like, man, I don't really know God in the way they're teaching him, but like, I know him, I love him. And then I think when I was 16 years old, that was the time where it was like, okay, it's me and God began to tell me, you do belong. You do belong. You may not have been raised by your father, and your mom and dad, may have accidentally had you, but you do belong. And I remember being at a revival. I was probably about 16, almost 17 years old. And at the revival, they were talking, he was preaching the book of Isaiah, and it was like, before your mom formed you, I knew you. And I was like, man, what I'm saying? Like, so when I really think about, who I am in terms of my purpose and in terms of a speaker, I think about the first thing that ever happened to me is a buzzword you use, belong. Everything changed for me when I was like, yo, I belong. Like, I'm not an accident. I'm not two people, two teenagers, dating in high school. Like, this is bigger than them, even though my biological father, wasn't in my life and, he's not been in my life. I'm not an accident. I was literally designed on purpose by God, which is deeper than, like, no disrespect to parents, but that's even deeper than your parents, having a creator who, out of all the millions of choices he had, he chose you and gave you certain gifts and certain abilities. So yeah, it was 16 years old that I was like, oh, okay. And what's crazy? I had an infinity to, the Martin Luther Kings of the world. I had an affinity as I was growing up, with the Marcus Garveys, the Malcolm X's, and even in my, late 20s, early 30s, your father, because it was, he did speak a lot about purpose, but with a different passion. You know what I'm saying? And what's crazy is when I really started to establish a relationship with my biological father, I was probably, early 30s. We went together for the first time, his friends, my friends. We went to Manpower. And of course, we went, consistently. And it was TD Jakes, your father, and Fred Hammond. Those were like, I'm sure it was more people, but that's the only people I remember. You know what I'm saying? And so I it just was always, I wouldn't say preachers. I don't know that I was really like moved by preachers, but I was moved by, men who could move men. I don't know that every preacher that I saw, I was like, I want to be a preacher, but I was moved by men who could move men, so that's Malcolm deep. Could move men. Yes. Martin could move men. Your father could move men. TD Jakes could move men. And I was drawn to men who could move men. And so, yeah, but that's who I am, a kid who longed for his daddy, for his biological father, didn't have him in his life. And as a result, was very destructive when I was younger, very defiant, angry, angry kid, getting kicked out of school, homeless, getting in trouble with the law. But when I went to that revival, he said you were you before your mama knew you, you were called. At that point, I believe I began to really put like all my heart and all my soul into why, God, why am I here? Why was that my mom? Why was that my dad? Why was I born in Chicago? You know what I'm saying? Why was I raised in Detroit? You know, like why? Why do I have these gifts? So yeah, that's I guess, you know, in short, that's who Eric Thomas is. And I say E.T. for those who don't know. I'm a 70s kid, so the movie Extraterrestrial came out in the 70s. So all my friends just started calling me E.T. And I liked it. So I've been going by E.T. since then.
Wow, E.T., you've mentioned so many things that I want to go back to. And so we will, starting with, you started, and I'm going to start where you just left off with asking the why. You were asking these why questions, like a 2-year-old, like a 4-year-old. Why? Why, daddy? Why, mommy? Why, daddy? And, you know, as a parent, you get annoyed at your child asking why. Just do as I say. Don't ask me no question. Just do what I say. But then as adults, like that why, we should not stifle our children, because that why is so important. And as someone who is very big into the personal development space right now, one of the things I'm starting to learn about emotions, and you mentioned a lot of emotions that you dealt with as a teenager, as a young adult, the defiance, the anger, the destructiveness, the getting in trouble. But before that, you said you were like that because all you wanted, like before there are these negative emotions like anger, hurt, pain, grief, before all of those, it lies on the foundation of love and desire and a need that we want. And all you had with this love and desire to know your father, to have a father, to belong to a father. And because your father wasn't there, because that desire wasn't met, because that need wasn't met, then there was all of these other regrets and hurts and pains that now led to anger. And then anger caused destruction. Anger caused you to be defiant. And I think about our young boys today, even some of our young men today, who are in prison, who are in jail, who go in and out, who die at an early age, who are indestructible or who are in destruction because, yes, we say they're angry. Yes, we say they're defiant. But if you really sat them down, they would say exactly what you just said. If you go all the way back to what are you really afraid of? What is it? Who has hurt you? If you ask those questions, they will say, I just wanted my dad to stay true to his word when he said he would pick me up when I was 5. I just wanted daddy in my life. And that's what I hear when I hear your story. And I think that is just so amazing that yes, you was this angry person, but it wasn't because you were born angry. You weren't. It was just something in your life that you were missing. And so even then you started asking why me? Why do I have this mommy? Why is this my daddy? And is there a time that you can remember, whether it's a season, a moment in your life where you started to get answers for all of the whys that you were asking?
Yeah, I did. You know, I think in the very beginning and for a very long time, you know, my mother, you know, again, one of the things that I think is critical is that, again, we didn't grow up in church. So, you know, so we didn't make a lot of decisions based on the word of God. Right. And I promise you, I'm this not even on no religious stuff. But I have a friend who went to college with us. He was he is a singer, and he used to sing this song that stuck with me. Will your anchor hold? You know, and man, powerful. You know, he just simple song, but he just the way he sang it. Will your anchor hold the storms of life? And as I got older, I realized, that's the truth. Like, what is our anchor? You know, like what is our anchor? And so some people's anchor is the Bible, like their religious belief, right? And I realized when my mother answered the question, because we weren't Christians, my mom still had a lot of the hurt, based on that relationship. Because my mom, she thought, as we got older and we talked, my mom thought that it was, maybe something that it wasn't. You know what I'm saying? My mom thought it was a real relationship, not what it turned out to be. And so, no, in the beginning, my mom couldn't answer my questions because my mom had never answered her own questions. So she had never really dealt with it. My mom, was blessed to get married, start a career. So it was almost with my mom like, hey, that was a portion of my life that I'm not necessarily excited about, and I want to move on in this space. So you got a kid who wants the past and a mom who wants her present. You know what I'm saying? And so we never really, at a young age, we never really reconciled. But as I got older, I think I was 25 when I first really started to heal and mature as a Christian and go, all right, I'm ready to talk to the person that I felt like betrayed me. I'm ready to talk to the person that I felt, wasn't there for me in a way that, you see so many kids when you grow up, their daddies are with them, whether it's, parent teacher conference, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's graduation, like whatever it is, the driver's license, whatever, like their real fathers are with them, and so I was a little angry in the beginning, but man, something about God and the word that the forgiveness boy, like he just gonna keep beating you up over the head with, you gotta let it go. You know what I'm saying? You gotta let it go. And so when my son was born, I was 25 when Jalen was born. And 24. Jalen was born in July. I turned 25 in September 3rd. And I was like, man, I gotta do this for my son. Like I gotta do this for my son. Like my son has to have a relationship with his biological grandfather. He has to know, his grandfather. Like he has to know him. And so I started asking my father questions, and he couldn't answer the questions because he didn't want to deal with certain things. So it's like, hey, your mom told me that I couldn't see you. You know what I'm saying? Your mom said I couldn't, you know what I'm saying? So he started throwing the responsibility off. And so I think at that point, I was blessed to start asking my grandmother some questions. And then my younger aunt, Auntie Cleo, I was like asking them some questions. So like, who's my grandfather? Who's this? Where do we come from? What's going on? So I had to really rely on my auntie. And it's funny, my grandmother, when she passed about it will be April, will be 3 years. The end of March, her birthday is April. She passed at almost 93. And so my grandmother for a long time, was that person to keep me connected to our history. But Auntie Cleo was like her right hand. So when my grandmother passed, like Auntie like really stepped up, and, we talk every weekend throughout my sermons. We talk about the sermons. And so I started getting answers from them. But I'll be honest with you, I had gotten so close to God that I didn't need some of the stuff that I needed when I didn't have God in my life. You know what I'm saying? It was like, it was like talking to the dealer versus talking to the manufacturer of the car. You know, like the dealer's cool. Like he can break down the Cadillac.
Wait,
like,
let's say that again. Let's go for those listening in the back.
Yeah.
Listen to this. You said it's like talking to the
designer
as opposed to talking to
the dealer.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
So many times we settle for the dealer. Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to.
No, go for it. This is
I couldn't let that go by so quickly. I need to write this down myself.
And you know why this is deep? Because the dealers are familiar with it, but they're not as intimate with it as the designer is. Mm-hmm. And the dealer, to be honest, they got their own challenges. You know what I'm saying? Like I really healed when I realized, my mom not Superwoman. I thought my mom was Superwoman. Like I didn't know no better. As a child, I just thought my mom had, I don't know what I thought. I just thought, but then when I started doing my homework, I was like, grandma had 14 kids and lost a set of twins. She would have had 16. And y'all grew up on the south side of Chicago with a 3-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. And you didn't know who your daddy was until you thought your daddy was dead until you were 12. I found out about my father when I was 12. It was like, oh my, you had your own issues. Like, man, I didn't even know. I thought you just came in the world whole. So here I am putting all this stress on you. You need a designer too. You know what I'm saying? I ain't the only one that need a designer. You need a designer too. And so it took a lot of pressure off my mom. It took a lot of pressure off my my dad. And I was like, yo, I can go to the designer and he can tell me stuff that they can't even tell me because they're limited too. They human. They limited, And so I started getting answers from the word. I started getting answers from God. And and please listen, y'all. God started to reveal to me the features. Like if you got, like, I don't know what you drive. I drive a Cadillac. I drive an Escalade. And my wife for a long time is, my daughter has a Wrangler. My son's got a, what is that he has? That's a Mustang, an older Mustang. And it's like, believe it or not, they're all cars, but they have different features. I got the type of car that it'll park for you. Right? I got the kind of car that you want to parallel park. You hit a button and it'll parallel park. I'm so hurt. I just found out. I've had this car for about 3 years. I just found out I've been carrying groceries, dropping stuff, that if I put my foot up under the trunk, it'll open. I never knew that. What I'm saying? I spent all these years without trying to hit the button.
Did you read the manual, sir?
I didn't read the manual. I didn't read the manual.
Exactly.
And so, come on, don't go there. Y'all,
hey, I gotta go there.
Y'all.
Dad always went there. Read the manual.
We're not reading the manual, y'all. And so when I start reading the manual, guys, forget the church and all the religious stuff that some of y'all, the dogma that you can't handle. When I start reading the manual, because I didn't grow up in church, I just started reading the manual for the manual's sake. I didn't have some of the other, the mean deaconess. Like I ain't had some of that stuff. And y'all, what I figured out was like, yo, I got features. Like I got a voice that's different than everybody else's voice. Like, yeah, I speak just like everybody else speaks, but like I have a sound that's different than everybody sound like. I've got a passion that's different than everybody. Like the way I look at people and care for people and think about people, like everybody's not, I thought everybody loved people and cared for people the way I care for people. And so when I started realizing what the features were, I started to want to drive this thing more. I wanted to talk to the designer more. I wanted to figure out more who was where he came from, what he did in the past, what were some of the cars he created before, why did he create me the way he created me, like what am I used for in this present? Yeah, and so it started getting fun. It wasn't like, it wasn't like going to school and you don't really know what you're going to school for. Like, when you go to college is different, master's is different. It's like you start doing what you really love to do. It's not like you taking these classes that don't have meaning. And so I started really getting in the word, reading the manual and figuring out who I was. And it's fun. Even to this day, I'm still figuring Eric Thomas out. Like I still don't know him completely. I'm still discovering things. And as I discover things and overcome, it just makes the ministry that God has given me more powerful.
And this is what I love about like living purpose and asking the question why and pursuing purpose, because you're going to find a certain layer now when you're 12. Then you're going to find a different layer when you become 16. And then you're 25. And I don't know how old you are now, but now you're 40 and 50 and you're still,
54.
to hear you say, you're still at 54, discovering and uncovering who you are. Therefore, the more you discover who you are, the more you discover what you can do.
Yeah.
Therefore, the more you discover why you are supposed to be doing so much more. So there are these different layers of purpose. It's almost like an onion. You eat, there's an onion that has all these layers.
Yeah.
And at different seasons and different levels, but also different maturities.
Yeah.
I'm not talking necessarily from a growth perspective, but from an inner maturity, from a spiritual maturity.
Yeah.
There's a certain layer that God isn't going to expose if you're not spiritually ready.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you're not emotionally ready. Dang, if you're not physically ready.
Absolutely.
Why would he wait showing you this level of you until you are ready?
Yeah.
And it's amazing to hear you focus on belong. You mentioned the word belong a few times earlier. And the reason why this is even a part of the podcast is because everybody, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you're from, I don't care your status, everybody wants to feel like they belong. They want to belong to a community, they want to belong to a culture, they want to belong to a family. So they're always trying to figure out, like, who am I and where am I from? And one of the, there are these 5 questions of the human heart that my dad talked about all the time. Who am I? Where am I from? Why am I here? What can I do? Where am I going? And all of these are connected. So we're talking about purpose, but identity is just as important. We're talking about purpose, but source is just as important.
Yeah.
And so you were so stuck on, who do I belong to?
Mm-hmm.
And then where did I come from? And then your why. And so you connected all of those first 3 questions beautifully. Like they're all in who you have become. And then where you are now, you weren't always there, because then you mentioned you were homeless.
Yes.
How long were you homeless? And then how did you get out of that? When did you transition out of that? How did you become out of that? And then how in the world did you end up where and who you are today?
Yeah, man. Belonging. I was homeless for 2.5 years. And some of it was abandoned buildings, some of it was cars, a little bit of it was, staying in people's homes as long as they would let you stay there until they realize, you're trying to stay there for a long period of time. And then I had 2 church families. One church family, she took me in. She had 3 kids. She took me in, but she ended up moving to Atlanta. So I was only with her for maybe a few months. And then another family allowed me to stay with them for probably about 3 months while I was working on my GED. And the goal was, if I went to college, good. If I didn't, I'd had to leave during, the time that I was supposed to go to college. But my boy Bob, devout Christian, devout Christian. It's weird though, because man, I just see him as a devout Christian. But Bob's parents were heroin addicts, and his father ended up getting shot and killed. And so Bob and his brothers, it was 4 of them. He had older siblings, but they weren't from that side. And so Bob, man, loved the Lord with all his heart, but he was also, in the streets, right? And so we would study the Bible. He came to my high school, I think my junior year, and or my sophomore year, and we would just be in the Word. We stayed in the Word. He introduced me to God. He introduced me to the Bible. He introduced me to a relationship with God, because I had studied with the Jehovah's Witness when I was a little younger and been through my go through. But again, when I was studying with the Jehovah's Witness, it was a lot of it was a lot of institutional stuff. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot of stuff focused on the church, aspect, not really you and God. And so Bob kind of introduced me to a relationship with God, like loving God, knowing who God was, knowing who I am. And so while I was homeless, I started going to church with Bob. So it's amazing how I want to use my words carefully, but like the struggle sometimes that we go through in the journey, right? It's amazing how the struggle part can draw you closer to God, than sometimes the success part can draw you closer to God.
The struggle part is necessary.
Yeah, the struggle part is
it's required. It's part of the process, like my uncle would say.
It's the silence, boy. So I spent a lot of time with God in those abandoned buildings. I started going to church with Bob, and I have the traditional Hollywood story. I started dating a young lady at the church who was purpose driven. I don't even know if she was like on fire for God like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that she was on fire for God like that, but she was definitely like obedient to her mom, very structured person, followed the rules. So she had a purpose. I'm going to college. I want to be in the medical field, like super, this is going to happen this date, and this going to happen this date. And she was a year younger than me. So her thing was, hey, when I go to college, I will not be dating a high school dropout. Like, I'm going to college. So I'm going to either date somebody there, get married, whatever. So I love you. I would love to be with you, but you're going to have to go. You have to come to college if I'm going to stay with you. And so prayerfully, it was a HBCU. And my pastor, also went to that university. And so he was like, hey, that would be great for you to go to Oakwood. Like, that'd be great. So I started studying for my GED. Purpose. I always say, like, yo, she got me to do what my parents couldn't get me to do, what the teachers couldn't get me to do, the school counselor couldn't get me to do it. You know what I'm saying? So she was just like, look, I'm leaving you. If you don't get your GED and get accepted, I'm going to have to break up with you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Sense of purpose. Like, it was like, oh, for the first time, education had a purpose. It wasn't somebody just dropped me off and I was supposed to, go and finish. Like, I never found purpose in school. I was like, I don't even know what we doing here. Like, I'm not really into school like that. I love math. I love recess. I'm not really into all this other reading and comprehending stuff, but she convinced me like, yo, I do not want to lose her. And so I end up getting my GED and following her to college. And so that's how the journey began, and I don't even know if I went to college for college. I think I went to college for her and end up, marrying her after my freshman year. We've been married 35 years. And,
I was about to ask you if you stayed with her, and turns out
yes,
she is your wife.
Yes. No
she
question.
is your wife. That is
no
amazing.
Questions. No questions.
Kudos to wife. Kudos to wife.
Oh, mad respect.
Oh, wow.
Mad respect for her. Yeah. But you said it. I didn't even think about it, but you said it. Like, what was so, I guess, attractive about her outside of, the physical was the structure, was the purpose, was the focus. And you know what's so crazy? It was limited. It was really limited because once we got together and I started doing my thing, she was like, whoa, now you got a purpose. She was like, yo, you on something different. Like, I just wanted to go to college and get a degree, and eventually get married and whatever, but I wasn't necessarily trying to, and so it's like, yep, she had that first layer of purpose. And then once she got me in the purpose game and understanding the sense of purpose. After that, it was like, oh no, I got it. You know what I'm saying? Like, no. We about to be on our God purpose, and so I found what God wanted me to do. Like I said, I don't know that it was theology. They had theology. I never did theology, but of course you had to do a bunch of theology courses because it was a Christian, HBCU. It was a Seventh-day Adventist university. And that was my boy. My boy was a Seventh-day Adventist. So, I started going to church with him. And then, of course, I was 17. So a year or something later, it was like, okay, you got to go to college. Their church was really heavy into that. But specifically, they were heavy on Oakwood. Like, that was their farm school, if you will. You know what I'm saying? So it's like everybody that went through that system, they all went to Oakwood. So I actually just was blessed to get in on, what they were doing. That wasn't even me. My wife actually went to their high school. She probably went to their middle school too. But she didn't grow up Seventh-day Adventist, but I think maybe about the age of 10, her mom joined the church. And so she started going to the middle school. Then she went to the high school. And then, of course, she went to the college. But to your point, purpose, like once I got it, it was like, okay, I want to be a teacher. I took one of those tests and it was like, okay, you would be a good lawyer. You would be a good teacher. You would be a good coach. You'd be a good, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, I want to teach. Like, I want to be in the classroom. And I think that's probably why I also gravitated towards your father, because he was a teacher. It's like, you got a lot of preachers, you know what I'm saying? It's different styles. You know what I'm saying? Some people, I don't know, there's like more narrative, like, you know what I'm saying? They tell stories and whatever, but like he would actually teach the word, like teach you Hebrew or teach you Greek or teach you, homiletics, if you will, like more than just like surface Bible, but like really going deep into the word. And so as a teacher, I still like to, evangelize. So I would do young people. I was known for like the youth. And so I just really got into it, like psychology of kids, why, like the different, what is it? Erik Erikson's, the 7, or 8 dilemmas of life. And so I really got caught up in that. Identity versus role confusion is where I really, like, that was a point for me. It's like, okay, I got to help these kids. Cause like, if you don't get it at this point, it's role confusion and you start mimicking other people, and then before you know it, you 50 years old and don't know who you are and don't know what your purpose is, So I really got heavy. I started teaching in a high school. From the high school, I went to a college, Michigan State University. I did K through 12, really, so purpose was just my thing. Like once I got to college, I read everybody's books. I'm listening to all Martin Luther King's speeches. I'm listening to Malcolm's speeches. I'm studying Marcus Garvey. And I just got heavy into why am I here? And I really felt like, and you'll hear me say in some of my speeches, no disrespect. I know my grandmother would roll over in her grave, but it was like Martin Luther King is dead. Malcolm is dead. Like we need in our generation I'm not saying that I'm on their level in terms of their character, but I'm on their level in terms of responsibility, like being responsible for not just being an entertainer. It's like, yo, not trying to be disrespectful, but we got enough entertainers. You know, we got enough athletes. Like, we don't have enough young men preaching and teaching the word of God, teaching purpose, teaching like how to be a better husband. Cause I, you know, just being honest, no disrespect. And I know my mom and my dad who raised me, you know, sometimes they listen to me. It's like, well, we weren't a good example. And it's like, I'm not saying you weren't a good example, but it wasn't a Christian example. That's different. You know what I'm saying? We weren't Christians. So we weren't following the Bible. Like I'm calling people to be Christian husbands, you know, Christian fathers. Right. And so, yeah, I got heavy in the purpose. And I don't know. God gave me a gift. So people actually who didn't like going to church, who didn't like the Bible, they would be drawn to me. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what God has given me. Like, I'm not necessarily the church for church people. I'm for people like myself who didn't grow up in church, but still need to know who God is and understand the importance of God. So when you talk identity, it took a minute. You know, the church, like the church is as much as we teach Christ, there still is a like uniformity boy. It's like, yo, this is how you're supposed to talk. This is how you're supposed to dress. This is how you're supposed to act. And it was like, God was like,
very limiting.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, you know this, most people don't know, but when I first started speaking, I really spoke more for the West Indies culture. Like, I wasn't really doing primarily American Christians. I was in Miami, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was in parts of New York where they were from, you know, the islands. And so it's a different level of conservativeness. You know what I'm saying? The conservative boy is a little different in the way. So that's where I was preaching and teaching and doing my thing. So it was a lot of, oh, you don't have a suit coat? And it's like, no, I don't got no suit coat. Well, you can't be in the pulpit if you don't got a suit coat. You know, I was like, I got an anointing. Like, I know God. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I really had to fight for a while for my identity. And then when God called me to really go more hip hop, it was even difficult for me when God was like, no. I'm gonna need the hat. I'm gonna need the t-shirt. I'm gonna need the gym shoes. I was like, okay, God, but I don't know if I'm gonna be accepted like that now. Like, you going a little too far. The message is far enough, but the look. But then when I started doing it, man, I promise you, prisoners, you know, kids, you know, just people in general just be like, yo, I don't know how to explain this, but you making me feel comfortable. Like your whole approach is just making me feel like, oh yeah, I can't love God the way I am, you know? So identity, yeah, I feel you. But even for me, when God started to say, yo, this is who I want you to be, and this is how I want you to, it was difficult at first.
Hey, purpose seekers. If this conversation has you thinking about your purpose, what it is, how to find it, and how to truly live it, then I have something just for you. Introducing the Purpose Finder Formula. And you have the free access to my 20-minute training designed to help you uncover your purpose and to start living it with confidence. No fluff, no guesswork. It's clear, practical, step-by-step guide to finding meaning and gaining clarity and direction. Your purpose is calling. Are you ready to answer? Head over to www.charisamunroe.com/Purpose Finder Formula. Enter your info and I'll send it straight to your inbox. Imagine waking up every day knowing your life has meaning, impact, and joy. That's what awaits you. So don't wait. Grab your free training today. Now, let's get back to the episode. But that's a beautiful part about purpose. And I say this on the podcast, and I will say it over and over and over again. Purpose comes in different forms, shapes, sizes, colors, textures. And so we don't all have the same purpose. And if we did, it's going to look different. It's going to talk different. It's going to sound different because I'm going to sound the way that Charisa sounds. You're going to sound the way that ET sounds. You're going to sound the way that you sound. You're going to look the way, you're going to dress the way that you dress. And I'm going to dress the way that I dress. And we're going to have the same message because really and truly the message should be the same.
Yeah.
How it's delivered can be delivered very differently. Because my gifts and talents are different from yours. And so I hate and I love that you did not allow, or you eventually found a way out of the
Yes,
box,
yes,
because people
yes,
will truly try to box you in. They
yeah.
tried to do it to my dad, and he was like, no way.
Yeah.
And then they tried to give him a box, and he was like, no way. I don't need a box. Forget taking me out of the box. Just take the box away. Because who you are and how you are supposed to operate within the purpose of why you were born is going to
Yes,
be very different than somebody
yes,
else's. But when we don't know who we are, my dad used to always talk about, when we don't know who we are, it's very easy to become someone else.
yeah. It's
And
dangerous.
which is why it's so easy for people to, you know, he was one of those, and this is my dad, he's just very different, but he was one of those who was never into the name brand. We had to get him into the name brand cars, per se. But when it comes to the clothing, he ain't into Jordans. He definitely ain't into Versace. He ain't into Tommy. He was fine going to Walmart, ET. He was fine going to Walmart, buying pants, shirt, shoes, and putting those things on and look like he came straight out of Vogue magazine. And he said it was him that gave what he wore the value, not the other way around.
That's good.
And so he didn't have any issues with, my brother and I and whoever else wanting to wear the name brands, but just make sure that they weren't so much of an idol that you were going after them to give you value.
Yeah.
You should know your own value and you should give the things value. And, if you didn't understand the meaning of purpose, then you would have been, I think I ever see you in a suit.
Yeah.
You would have been in a suit in that pulpit and just you would have been doing, you would have been trying to do what you were doing, but you would have been uncomfortable. And the people that was for you, the people that you were to reach, you would never have reached them.
Yeah.
And the last thing a prisoner wants to see is a preacher boy in a suit coming.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it's just a beautiful thing, because purpose truly is it's very colorful. It's very rainbow. It's very vast, and it doesn't have to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And to think about purpose and not think about identity, to think about purpose and not think about where you're from, doesn't complete the picture. And so even when I listen to your homeless story, you weren't homeless long, but you were. But even there is where you got connected.
Yes.
Even there was where you found what you needed to find. And then you didn't stay there. And then you talk about meeting this girl that you dated, and she challenged you. Mm-hmm. And then there's that question of if you didn't date, if you weren't dating this lady, or if you were and she challenged you and you said, then you're going to have to go. Do you think you would be where you are had you not gone that, or would you have just found a different route and still get here?
No. I don't think so, because, I say this, and this is something I've been in the last, few years, I've really been trying to drive home. A lot of people will never be great, even though they are great. They'll never be great because of the environment that they're in, and
company.
Somehow, I tell people immediately, Genesis 37:5, immediately after Joseph dreamed this dream, the first thing God had to do is he had to send him out. It's like, you can't, you're not going to be great here. Your brothers don't see it. They just they don't see it. You know what I'm saying? So much so they're trying to kill you. Like, they don't see it. Your dad, he knows you're special, but he don't see it. You got to go somewhere where people are going to be able to know your greatness. And again, as soon as you see him in Potiphar's house, Potiphar's like, whoa, bro, you can be over at all my house. Like, you can have everything. Now, you can have my wife too, what I'm saying, because of who you are, but I'm asking you, what I'm saying? I'm asking you kindly, what I'm saying? Like, take everything, but don't take my wife though. What I'm saying? Like, go ahead and, what I'm saying? Leave me with that. But everything else in my house, you rule over it, right? He goes to prison, and they see it immediately. Like, man, this boy is, the Pharaoh is looking for somebody, and his boy is like, oh, I forgot. It's his kid named Joseph in prison. I know he could do that for you. And so it's like, David, I got all these sons. You sure? He's like, do you have another one? Yeah, but he's tending sheep. And it's like, there are certain environments that don't recognize your greatness. And so you can't blow up there. And so for Dee Dee, Dee Dee knew my greatness. She knew like, oh, okay, my mom don't see it. Your mom don't see it. A lot of these people in church don't see it, but I see that you have something. Now you rough around the edges, but I think, you know what I'm saying? I think I can work with you. And then going to college at HBCU, it was individuals there that saw Bob, even though he didn't go to college with me. He was like, bro, you need to get out of Detroit. You need to get off the streets. You need to go to Oakwood. Like God's got something special for you there. And so that environment knew I was great. I was 19 or 18. I just turned 19. We started a ministry on campus. It was just like, yo, it was a world where everybody was like, yo, you got something, and again, there were elders that were like, yo, you got some issues you need to work on, but you got something. And people would just invest in me. People would put money up for me to be in school. People would do favors for me, put me in classes I wasn't supposed to be in because they thought those professors could, like he a freshman. He's not supposed to be in this particular course yet, but we think this professor connected with Eric is going to take Eric to another level. And they were absolutely right. So no, I don't think I could have done it in Detroit. Nothing wrong with Detroit, but sometimes a prophet is without honor. You know what I'm saying? And so I believe, without Dee Dee, even to this day, like and I hate to admit it, and we're recording, so I hate to admit it, but I'm just now getting to a point of celebrating they say iron sharpens iron, but sometimes when you're with a sister, it's titanium sharpens titanium. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just getting to a place a year or so ago where I'm celebrating her pressure. Like I'm celebrating her saying, oh no, the whole world, they could shine. They could tell you how great you are if that's what you want. But I know you haven't hit your mark yet. I know you're not in your stride yet. I know you lazy. Like I had a issue maybe a year ago when she came to me and was like, have you stopped reading? And I was like, what? She's like, have you stopped reading? And I was like, why are you asking me that? And she was like, just answer my question. Have you stopped reading? And I was like, yeah, I stopped reading. She's like, I could tell. So when you preach, like, I know where you're going now. So it's like, oh, nope, I heard that before. I heard that before. She's like, I could tell when you're reading and you and God are in a secret place, because when you speak, I don't know what you're about to talk about. And I've been with you your whole life. So if I don't know what you're about to talk about, it's some new, fresh manna that God has given you. And I was like, but the people are saying, my message is fire. Like I'm going viral. Like, I don't know why you tripping. And she like, I'm not really on the people and what the people are saying. Like if they want to cheerlead for you, that's cool. I'm not your cheerleader. I'm your coach.
I want to sit here for a second because, E.T., you're talking about my whole marriage right here, okay?
Yeah.
You're in my household. Please get out and close the door behind you. But you remind me of my husband. So, of course, I come from structure. So I come from the West Indies. I come from the islands. So I come from the suit in the pulpit. You know my dad. You don't see my dad with no hat on. He can have on a suit, a tie, 3-piece in the pulpit. That's what I come from. And then I attach myself to a man who is very much like you. Jeans, T-shirt, cap. That is his wardrobe. If he have to wear a suit, he's complaining, but he's going to wear it. And you mentioned you being rough around the edges. He's rough around the edges. He's a police detective. So go figure. He's all these things. But he has the heart, just like you, of the men, of the young boys that he's mentoring. He has his own nonprofit. And so he gets boys in the 4th grade, so they're young. And now he has boys who he has mentored who are now 30 and 35. And so he meets me, and initially, I caught myself trying to change him, if you will, if I am to be honest and transparent. But then I quickly remember, as much as I come from structure, I also remember that he is going to be who he is for who he needs to be for.
Yeah.
Because there are times I want to say, well, baby, you don't got to talk to them like that. Really? You got to say that word? Do you have to cuss? Like, I'm that person. Like, do you? And he's like, yes, it's the only way that you can get through to them. And I'm like, but no. And he says, see, you're the woman. This is the problem now. There are men and women in their lives. There are women and mothers and aunties and sisters who are raising these boys, and they're going to grow up. And so we have that conversation back and forth. And so I'm finally at a place where I recognize how strong, how powerful he is just the way he is for the men and the boys that he need to reach. And so I stretch him. And then you have people who would say, oh, he's an amazing guy. Talking about my husband.
Right,
you have a great husband.
Right.
And like your wife said, they were like, but I know there's some things about him. I know that you don't know. And this is what you think. Okay. But then, you know, and me as his wife, Dee Dee as your wife, like we know,
yes.
We know the diamond in the rough.
Yeah. Yes.
We know the potential. We see what you may not see, and we see what God allows us to see for the person that we are making the king of our home and the leader of our family.
Yeah.
And so we're going to apply the pressure because we want you to be the best.
Yeah.
So when you say that it's taking you, of course, 30 something years to celebrate her, it hasn't taken my husband that long, but he's finally at a place 4 or 5 years later, however, where when he hated my pressure before, because it forced him to have to be a different man, to be true to himself and true to what he is teaching the boys. He appreciates that pressure now.
Yeah.
And he'll say it. He don't want to say it. It's like you said, you don't want to admit it. But he will say that he is so grateful that and he always said, I have my foot on his throat. But he always said he's grateful for that.
Absolutely.
Because he said, if I didn't, he said he would go just out there and be wild, do whatever it is he want to do. And he appreciates that now. And so now that makes for a very good relationship, because then I now also can trust that his edgy, his jeans and t-shirt and suit doesn't mean that he's lazy.
Yeah.
It just means that that's just how he's built.
Absolutely.
And he's still going to reach the boys.
Yeah.
He's still going to reach the men.
Yeah.
Tell Dee Dee I'm on a side. I love Dee Dee.
I will.
On a side for sure. For sure. Oh, you're in my house. It is beautiful. So, you had mentioned that you were destructive, angry, defiant, and you get in trouble. What did that look like back then?
So, man, for my mom, it was a lot, because it was a lot of trouble in school from, maybe middle school, high school. So I switched. Man, I'm switching schools every year. Catholic school, they don't kick you out. They just kindly say they recommend you go somewhere else. So my mom was constantly trying to get me in schools. And it's easier when you go to school in the neighborhood. You can walk. You know what I'm saying? So now my mom got to take me to school. She has to constantly be up at the school parent-teacher conference. She's getting phone calls. It was a lot. I remember once, I don't even know why I did this, but I went to a Catholic school. I was probably 10 years old. I would steal from the store next door. It was like a ice cream store. They would have like yo-yos and stuff. And I would literally steal from there, but like let them see me stealing something and then run, and they couldn't catch me. You know what I'm saying? I just whatever. So police coming to the house, like your son did this, your son did that. So it was just constant. We seeing counselors. I don't want to talk to the counselors. They showing me like butterflies with ink, and what do you see? I'm like, I don't see jack. You know what I'm saying? So I'm being defiant. One counselor, then we got to see another counselor, then we got to see another counselor. I think I finally got to a point where it was an older sister, and she wasn't playing no games. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't playing. But it was just that counselor after counselor. Just my mom couldn't even, just have a regular life, because I was always into something. And of course, when I was homeless, I was 16 years old. Detroit is not necessarily the safest place in the world, so my mom was really going through it emotionally. Like, where's my son? What's happening? Like, and shoot, I'm a father now. So my kids go to the store, and I'm wondering like, what's going on? So Defiant was just like, just constant, trouble. Now, I was fortunate. I don't know why, but even though I wasn't structured, when I had to adapt, I was more into structure when I had to adapt. I don't know why I'm like that, but it's like I'll get in trouble with the police. I'm going off on the police. But when it gets to the point where it's like, okay, I'm about to get arrested, some kind of way, I don't know how, but I know okay, you're
That's
going
your
too
limit.
far. Yeah, you're going
Exactly.
too far. You and the cop going back and forth, y'all screaming and hollering at each other. Okay, he's getting to the point now where he's about to, all right, stop. And my friends would be like, man, you done jumped out the car. You done jumped out on the police. I don't know how to say it, but it's like, I know when I push them and they go, okay, I'm done. We're not, and then it's like, transformer, so my whole life I've gotten in trouble, but some kind of way when it's like, okay, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to have to pay a fine, or something bad is going to happen. You're going to lose your privileges. I know how to just like, okay, nope. Okay, we're going too far. We need to stop. We need to make a change. So for my mom, yes, she did have to go through a lot, but I always knew, all right, you're going too far. This is the point where you need to pull back. You need to be respectful. You need to honor, your elders. You know what I'm saying? You need to understand the law of the land. But yeah, a lot of trouble in terms of time for my mom, just meeting with principals, meeting with teachers, meeting with superintendent. It just was a lot on her. Bless her heart.
Oh, power to mom.
Yeah, bless her soul.
So even though you didn't have the example at home of a healthy marriage, and then you also didn't have the example of a healthy father relationship, how has that affected your marriage now? How has that affected your relationship with your children as their father?
To be honest with you, I think a lot of what I did was, trial and error. I think the only thing that saved me was a pure heart. I think with most people who fool with Eric Thomas, it's like, oh, okay, no, he got a pure heart. Like he don't mean nobody no harm. Like he really trying to do the best that he can do. You know what I'm saying? And so I think for my children, I kind of grew up watching, my mom and my father, who raised me. I watched them work. So for me, it was like work. It was a different type of work, though. I was an entrepreneur. I was speaking, taught, when my kids were younger, I taught at the schools that they went to. I actually got hired to teach and they would come with me. And so I think especially the Christian part of it, it's like, oh, I didn't know you were supposed to do it this way, or I didn't know you were supposed to do it that way. Like Christian marriage look a little different. You know what I'm saying? Christian marriage is a little bit more like on one accord type deal. It's like a union kind of thing. Like it's different rules. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, okay, I did learn from my parents this, but I ain't necessarily learned this. And I did learn from parenting this, but I ain't necessarily learned this. And then my mother, didn't grow up with in a home where they were married. And then my father who raised me, his father died when he was probably 3 or 4 years old, so it was like I said, when I got older, I realized, oh, y'all practicing, you know what I'm saying? And y'all practicing without Christ. You feel me? So this a whole nother level of practice right here. So for me, it was like, okay, God is the anchor. All right, we're going to pray. Okay, we went to church regularly. The kids loved the church. They loved the church that, they grew up in, at least when we were in Huntsville, Alabama. We had friends that were Christians. They would come over. We would do church. We would eat together, so it was like all of us. We were young. I was 20. Well, young, sometimes in our community, young could be 16, 17, but I was 25. So for me, that was young. My first one was 25. Jada I was 28, so it was a lot of trial and error, but I think the kids, especially now, I was fortunate that even though I worked a lot, my wife was a worker. Like we weren't into that. We're going to go to every football game, every basketball game. We weren't into that. Like we from Detroit. We working. If y'all going to do sports, y'all got to figure it out. But my wife would tell my kids all the time, I'm not trying to be mother of the year. You know what I'm saying? So you know what I'm saying? So she like, I'm not even into that. I got to take care of myself. I got to take care of y'all. If y'all don't understand that I'm a registered nurse, if y'all don't get the hours I got to put in, if y'all don't get to, and so I think though we're fortunate now that we survive, meaning God bless us to be alive. Our children are alive. God bless them. My son's 29. My daughter's 26. We have a chance now to spend some time with them and do some things that when we were working younger, we didn't have an opportunity to do. And now getting into the word a little bit more in terms of not do as we say, but hey, what are you going through? Son, what are you going through? What are your challenges? So I feel fortunate to have two parenting lives, if you would. Now, my wife, she different. She like, they grown. I don't care. Whatever they do, they do. You know what I'm saying? That's on them. We did the best that we could do. But I do feel like, the work and the demands of work did play a role, or my purpose, like trying to figure out my purpose, that happened when they were kids. So I was trying to figure out my identity, figure out what I was. So a lot of time outside of the house in terms of being on the road. My son was with me a lot until my wife was like, no more homeschooling. Like, you not structured enough. This boy got to go to school. You know, so when he was probably about, I would say 7, we put him in school, so he wasn't with me as much. And I, being an evangelist, like I was gone. Weekend here, weekend there, week here, in the summer, 4-week tent revival, so the only thing I regret is some of the time where it was like, man, you didn't have dad. I wasn't thinking about it because I was the one on the road. But what was it like not to have me on the weekends? Or what was it like not to have me for a month, because I was, doing my thing. And there was times that they did travel with me. But like I said, once they started school, because they both would be with me when Didi was working. I would have both of them with me in Philly, for 2-3 weeks at a time. But when they went to school, I wasn't there as much. And so that's the part where I'm like, okay, God. He was like, no, you're good. You got time now. So you can't forget those things which are behind, right? And press toward the mark of a higher calling. So you're with them now. And so by the grace of God, we do get a chance to really talk about things that they didn't get a chance to talk about. Unfortunately, we grew up, it was like, hey, you don't talk to adults about, like you do as you told. So we weren't as bad as our parents, but we was on that. So now it's kind of like, as they're adults, it's like, talk to me. What are you feeling? How do you feel about our relationship? What could have I done better? And not that I want to redo anything, but if there's any trauma, I want to be able to help in the process, as it relates to, the trauma. And so my daughter's a social worker. She does therapy. And then my son has a therapist that I'm very close to. So we get an opportunity to kind of talk to the therapist. And I was like, hey, is there anything I can help with? And then with my son, he like, Dad, I don't always want to talk through the therapist. I want me and you to talk. And I want us to be at a point where we could talk without, it blowing up. And I'm like, bet. So last year, we kind of got to that point where it's like, okay, good. Let my man talk. Let him say whatever, he wants to say, and kind of help walk him through it, because they're going to get married. And I want them to be as whole, and as developed as they can possibly be, knowing that once they go into a relationship, of course, there's not going to be any perfection. But as much as I can help you guys heal and learn how to deal with situations in Christ, I want to be able to do that.
And this is just a great example of the relationship that a father must have with his child, and son and daughter, man and woman. And you not having that is so great to see. You want to be a father that's present, but not only present, a father that's active, a father that's actually there for your son, for your daughter, not adding pressure, not pushing, but just being present, just being there and available. And I can remember that being the way with my parents. My dad, he was never pushy. He was never pressurizing. He was never, you must and you will, but he was definitely there for us to
that's a blessing.
Access. Especially boys. And I know a lot of your ministry, a lot of the work that you do is around boys and is around men. Why is that? Is that purpose related? Is that purpose driven?
Yeah. You hear your dad, he used to talk a lot about, Adam being alone with God, and Adam finding, his purpose in God, whether it was, tending to the land or tending to that, animals, naming the animals, he just talks about that, that time before, there was, and the time when Adam was alone with God. And it's like, oh, I get it. Adam was first because it was Adam's responsibility to be responsible, not to lord over, but be responsible. And so I'm like, oh, okay, if I teach men how to be responsible, I teach the world how to be responsible. Your dad talked about that a lot, and so it's like, okay, I got it.
Wait.
Yeah.
You got to stay there for 2 more seconds. I know our time is about to be up, but you said, if you teach the man to be responsible, you teach the world to be responsible. and I'm going to be like a 2-year-old kid. Why?
Yeah.
Why is that important?
I think one, for some reason, whether it's women or children, they follow us. You know what I'm saying? And her desire shall be unto a man. Like they follow us. Kids follow us. It's like, what my daddy doing? I remember when my daughter was young, she would come out with her clothes. She'd walk past her mom to me to be like, Dad, what you think? My son, he played football. He would get a fumble, and I would see him looking over at me to see if I saw he had to fumble. And I'm like, bruh, just run the ball. And even as strong as my wife is, it took me some time to realize even she wants to be led.
Absolutely.
I didn't used to think she wanted to be led. She was so strong. I didn't think she wanted to be led, but I was like, hold up. No, she actually doesn't want to be this responsible. She doesn't want to be this responsible. You've put her in a situation where she's had to be responsible and she loves you enough to be responsible. She don't want to be this responsible. You know what I'm saying? Like, she don't want to bear all of these, this by herself, or she don't want to bear this load. Yes. And so it's like, we are naturally looked to, individuals naturally look up to us. And so it's like, man, if men are responsible, everybody's going to be responsible. And I've never said this before, never even thought about it, but a lot of why we aren't where we are supposed to be is because we as men haven't been responsible. You know what I'm saying? Like, my father wasn't responsible. He wasn't there for me, and I've even struggled. Man, I struggle, especially when my grandmother died. It's like, yo, I'm a Mundy. Like, that's what I am. Mundy, right? And I don't get to walk around with that name because my father wasn't responsible. And somebody else married my mom and adopted me and gave me their name. And so, like, I've struggled with, like, yo, I got to figure out a way to make sure that my blood knows, if Jesus don't come in the next 100 years, like, my blood needs to know, like, yo, that was my cousin. That's my, great uncle. You know what I'm saying? Like, they need to know. And it's like, because my father wasn't responsible, even my last name was jeopardized, And it was like, yo, bro, if you just would have been responsible, like, you just would have been there for me. If you just would have showed up when my father who raised me, if you just would have went to court and was like, no, that's my son. And so, yes, his mother is getting married, but that's my child. He bears my name. And so, because he wasn't responsible, there were people who influenced me that should have never been able to influence me. But the person that was supposed to influence me didn't influence me. There were people who spoke certain things into my life who never had the right to speak things in my life, but the person that was supposed to speak into my life wasn't there to speak into my life. And so, I'm not blaming my father, but there were a lot of things that didn't go down in decency and order in the way they should have, that put me in a situation that I was in. So it's like, okay, E, how have you been irresponsible? And then how can you be only responsible? You know what I'm saying? And so I tell my kids all the time, man, when they were born, I don't know what happened. I guess more purpose. But I was like, oh no, you and God gonna have to be one. Oh, I got a daughter now. Oh no more playing. Like, you have to be more in private who you are than publicly who you are. Mm-hmm. Like, you really gonna have to walk the walk and talk the talk now, because you got a baby girl looking at you, and you can't be talking about God and the love of God, and she needs to give her life to God if you're not really doing it. Like, they need to see you in prayer. They need to see you wailing with God. They need to see you crying out. They need to see you walking and talking with the Lord. They need to see you going to God to figure out what you're supposed to be doing with. Like, they need to see it, not you faking it. And so when my children were born, I went to another level of responsibility that I hadn't gone to, prior to them being born. So I just think when Eric Thomas got his stuff together, not only does my house have it together, but people are watching my videos going, bruh, you like a father to me, bruh. I was in a dark spot. You got me out. Now, I didn't personally get you out. The Holy Ghost through me got you out. But if I wasn't a vessel, then maybe you wouldn't have gotten out. And so it's like, yeah, you have to be. And that's why I said, when I look at men like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Garvey, your father, TD, like, I don't see preachers. I see men who have decided to be responsible so that other men can be responsible. And so much so that even like my assistant pastor, I did. I gave him the first book on Man of Purpose from your father. I gave him his first book. But after that, he would be quoting stuff to me and stuff I know I never gave him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never gave you that. I never told you to watch that. I gave you one book. But he grew up in a home with his father very much in his life, military man, but not necessarily spiritual like that. And so we had to look to responsible men to teach us how to be responsible. And so once we got in contact with those men, then we were like, yep, exactly as they are for us, we need to be for the world and for the duration of our lives. Because, you know, again, when you in your 20s, you think you're going to live forever. Once you get my age, you start realizing like, oh, okay, no, you don't have forever. And so you need to put out as many books, as many videos, as many podcasts, like at least with people, because I don't do a lot of podcasts, but people who share your values, you need to do as much as you can so that you can help as many people as you can, not only alive, but when you leave, you can't produce content anymore. So you need enough stuff out there that's still going to lead men and help men to be responsible. And I think for me, that's like, man, like there are a lot of designers. We don't know who they are now that they're dead. There were a lot of athletes. Ain't nobody talk about them now that they're gone. They're not even playing no more and they're alive and ain't nobody talk about them. But when you have individuals like your father that you were so responsible that even in your death, you're still being responsible. Like, yo, that's unbelievable. And that's what I want.
I'm talking new people are finding him. We're not talking old people who knew him when he was alive. He's no longer here. It's been 10 years. And as he mentions my father, he's talking about the late Dr. Miles Monroe, who died 10 years ago. And I hear stories every day, E.T., from someone who is younger than me, who said, I just found your father 5 years ago or 3 years ago. And that's why my dad talked about legacy all the time. What legacy do you want to leave behind where you don't need a tombstone, where you don't need, people to know where you are buried? Just the fact that this is your name and this is what you did while you were alive. And he was very big, like you said, he was very big on men being the foundation.
Absolutely.
Which is why that's the foundation of the family, which is therefore the foundation of the community, which is therefore the foundation of the nation, the country, and the world at large. So ladies and gentlemen, when you hear the hip hop preacher say, a responsible man will make a responsible world, I love it. I love it. And I know, E.T., you've given so much great advice, encouragement throughout our entire talk here. But if you can give a final piece of advice, best advice that you can give to our listeners, especially to the men and to the women that love them, what would that be?
It's the shirt, guys. You owe you. You know,
owe you.
It's my, of course, New York Times bestseller, but it was, CJ was like, E, you got one book to write. That's going to be that New York Times bestseller. Like, what's the topic? And I was like, yo, you owe you. Because there was a time where my life wasn't what it is now, and it was the blame game. If only my mom had, if only my father had, if only I had not been black in America, you know what I'm saying? If I would have been born white, you know what I'm saying? It's like always something, like if I would have went to better schools, or if this was, it's like, no. You said it earlier, what your father said. The real value is you, and you place value on everything else. So when I got to a point, it was like, yo, E, you owe you. Your mama don't owe you no more. You're talking about stuff that happened to you when you were 12. You 32. Like, enough. You talking about your father not being in your life. Bro, that was good when you was 9 and 10. But you got a family now. You got a wife and kids now. Like, they don't deserve you talking about something that didn't happen to you when you need to be creating stuff for them. It's like, come on, bro. You owe you. Don't nobody else owe you. And in Christ, we live, we breathe. Like, in Christ, we have our being, y'all. I mean, literally in Christ. So you don't need nothing else. You got you got God. I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. Like, like exceedingly abundantly beyond anything you could think or ask. Eyes have not seen, ears have not, neither has. Like, you owe you to be what God has called you to be.
Hip hop preacher, you're preaching. You're preaching.
Period.
Come on.
So you owe you.
You owe you.
You owe you is the
nobody owes you.
You owe you to be a great father. You owe you to be a great husband. You owe you to be a great a preacher, a great leader, a great person, a great Christian, whatever. It's not going to happen by the hands of anybody else. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen because you and God made it happen.
Oh, AT, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Is phenomenal. This is phenomenal.
It is. You owe you. Nobody else owes you nothing. E.T., please, as we close, as we end, do not leave us without something. I know you have something to offer to the people, to the world. So let's talk about your Thrive in 25 challenge. Tell us everything we need to know and where we can find and sign up.
I think that's where you can find it. Thrive in 2025 challenge.com. And again, February 1st, this is all we're doing. Again, I said for a lot of you, you're not in the environment that you need to be in to thrive. And so all we're doing is a free, like literally, this is not marketing. It is literally free. Okay, well, 7 a.m. Eastern time zone. I don't know the time zone that you guys are on there. So I don't know the time zone, but
I'm Central. I'm in Chicago, by the way.
So you're in Chicago?
You're from Chicago.
Oh, I'm from Chicago, South Side. Okay, you in Chicago.
South Side, Chicago.
Right.
Yes,
I have to come. I have to look. I work with District 13 school system. So when I'm there, we'll have to connect. I didn't know that. Oh yeah, Bondell didn't tell me that. You in the Shy. Okay. I have to take you to Virtues in Hyde Park restaurant. We'll chop it up there.
Let's do it. Absolutely.
So go there for free. It's 7 a.m. Eastern. All throughout February, and we're just going to, CJ and I, God used the two of us to create this ministry that we have, and we just want you to get in an environment where you hear truth, where you get principles, where you get the spirit, where you get prayed for, where you're in an environment for at least 30 days where you don't have to fuss and fight and scrap and, you know what I'm saying? Like you will be with like-minded people. And then on Fridays, we do a Q&A to give you an opportunity to dialogue with us. So yeah, Thrive in 2025, Thrive2025challenge.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So you guys, make sure you're present, make sure you register, get all the information you need. I'm going to make sure that I'm present on one of those days.
Amen.
Because whatever hip hop preacher has to say, I want to make sure I am hearing it firsthand. I don't want to hear secondhand. I don't want to hear the replay.
Yeah.
Make sure you are there to hear it firsthand. E.T., thank you so much.
Thank
it's been
you.
A pleasure.
Likewise.
Next to purpose, next to family, I want to end on my next favorite thing in the world. And that's food. I'm so glad you mentioned virtue because now I know a restaurant I must try, and what I'll do is I probably won't go until you come and
I'll be there soon, so don't rush. I'll be there soon.
Absolutely. Then let's make it happen. So I must ask, what is your favorite food and your favorite restaurant?
So favorite food, if I can get it like I like it, jerk chicken, rice and peas, Cataloo.
Okay. So you want Bahamas. I mean, you want Jamaica. You don't even, I can bring you better food than that from the Bahamas.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite if I can get it. Yeah. And if I can get the Escove's fish with their head on it, everybody don't know how to do that right.
No, they
but
don't.
If I can get that, that's my favorite with a red velvet cake. And I'm good to go.
Okay. Yeah. When you mention fish with the head on it, then you a true wannabe island boy. I like it.
No question. One of the homes that I stayed in for that time frame before I went to college, sister Cannoneer, brother Cannoneer, they were from Trinidad and Tobago, so that's what we ate. That's what we ate on the rig.
Good food. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. I love food, so that's where we end. But ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great having you here. I hope that all of the words that you heard from this beautiful, purpose-driven man has settled, has changed your life, has resonated with you. You can find him any and everywhere on social media at, what's your handle?
E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher.
E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher. Make sure you are listening in to someone who will pour into your life so that you can be living a life full of purpose. Till next time, I'm your host, Charisa Munroe-Wilborn, and we'll see you soon. Bye. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I hope today's conversation lit a fire within you because purpose isn't just something you chase. It is something you live every single day. If this episode resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more people on their journey to purpose. Let's continue the journey together. Join the Purpose Finder community on Facebook for exclusive insights, tools, and a tribe of purpose-driven people just like you. And remember, the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Your purpose isn't far off. It's already within you. It's time for you to uncover it and live it boldly. Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep walking in your purpose.